Okay, so we just went ahead and we went over the compression for quiz 7. So let's go over the second part, which is decompression. This part's just going to go ahead and help us prove that we did the compression part right, and that when we decompress the message, or I guess our string, we get our initial message back. So the first part about decompression is, again, you have to have your code table. This code table is the exact same from the compression part. As you can see, I didn't change anything. It's the exact same. But all you need is a new input buffer and output column, and then we're going to go ahead and we're just going to start evaluating. But this time, instead of evaluating our initial message, we're going to be evaluating the string that we got from our compression part. So the way that this works is we're just going to go from left to right, evaluating each input, putting the same letter into the buffer, and then our output this time is going to be the letter in the code table as opposed to the number. We're kind of doing things a little bit backwards this time. So we're going to go and look at the first value in our string, which is 0. So our initial input is going to be 0. 0 is equal to A in the code table. So that means my buffer, I'm going to go ahead and put A in the buffer. And our output is going to be equal to our input. So our input is 0, which is the same as A in our buffer. So our output is going to be A. Because remember, our output, we're looking to get the initial message here. We want to get this as our output. So then we can go ahead and we can continue down the line. We can continue to evaluate. So we move on to the number 1. Input 1. If we look back at our table, that is B. And so the way that the buffer works in this is a little bit tricky. Your current buffer is equal to your previous output with the first letter of your current output. So our previous output was A, and our current output, since our input is 1, our output is B. And then we just want to add the first letter to our buffer. So our first letter, our only letter for this one is B. But you guys will see once we get longer outputs what I'm talking about. But yeah, then we go ahead, we're going to move on to our next character in our string, number 2. Number 2, which is going to give us the letter C for our output. And remember, our buffer is equal to our previous output plus the first letter of our current output. So this buffer is going to be equal to BC. Cool. So now we move on to the next. Next input is 3. In our code table, this is equal to D. And then buffer is equal to previous output plus first letter of current. So CD. And you guys can check your work with this as you go along. As you can see, so far our output is A, B, C, D. And if we go to our original message, A, B, C, D. So we know we got the first 4 right already when it comes to compressing and then decompressing. So let's carry on. Next number is 4, which is AB. So our output is going to be A, B. And then this is what I was talking about how you always take the first letter of your current input, because our buffer is obviously our previous input, D, plus the first letter of our current input, A. So we get, well, that's kind of a wonky A, but we get DA in our buffer. And that's it for that evaluation. So yeah, now we have AB, which we can check our message. As you can see, ABCD, and then AB. So yeah, so far so good. Our next input is 6, which in the code table is CD. And then our buffer is equal to our previous input, or our previous output, I should say, which is AB, plus the first letter of our current input, which is C. So our buffer should be A, B, C. And then we move on to the next number in our string. So 3. output for 3 we already know is D. So we can go ahead and get D in there. And then, of course, buffer is equal to previous output plus current. So we get C, D, D. And we can move on. Number 2. The output of that is C. Previous plus current, DC. And then we're just going to keep on going. We can just real quick check to make sure that our message is still what it's supposed to be. ABCD, which is ABCD, AB and CD, ABCD. So we're good on this part. And then we get into B and C, which is this part right here. So far, so good. We still have our message intact. Our string is equaling our current output. So that's awesome. We're on track. So we can go ahead, we can evaluate the next one. 1, we know this is equal to B. Previous output plus current. So you get C, B. And then the next one is 0. We know that's A. Previous plus current, BA for our buffer. And then we go ahead, we just have a couple more to evaluate, so I'm going to go ahead and drop down some more. So we just did this 0, so our next input is going to be the number 10. Number 10 is equal to DC. And now we do previous input plus the first letter of our current, so our buffer is AD. And then we can go ahead and evaluate our very final number in our string, the number 12. This is equal to BA. Output. And then the buffer is just going to be the same as it's been this whole time. Previous output plus the first letter of our current, D, C, B. And that's it. So now we can go ahead, we can go down our output and verify that it's the same as our initial message, which, I mean, we've already done up to this point. So, you know, this is the halfway point right here, DCBA. That matches up right here. We got DCBA, and then we have DCBA, which makes sense again, DCBA. So that's awesome. We got the same output as our initial message that we received before we did our initial compression. So that's how we can verify that not only did we get the string right when we compressed, we also got the correct message back after we did our decompression. So yeah, and then of course, because Professor is super particular and will take off points for anything, it's probably in your best bet to just write something like message equals and then just write out, you know, the initial again, ABCD, and then just keep going, since, you know, he'll take off points for anything. But here is all of the work for decompression, and good luck on the quiz tonight.